You know, when I was a young lady, I surrendered to the mission field. And I actually applied for Air Force Officers Training School when I graduated from FSU in September 1979. And but I decided I wanted Jesus first in my life, and I wanted to be in the center of his will. And before I went to a Wednesday night prayer service, I prayed and asked Jesus to speak to me if he wanted me not to go to officers training school, but to do something else with my life. When I went to the prayer service that night, we had a guest speaker who was not scheduled to speak. It was Dr. Roger Ellison from Baptist University of America, the executive vice president. The whole message, he spoke on the excuses we make not to do God's will. And I felt like that message was tailor-made just for me. And I went to him after the service and said, I've been thinking, I just graduated from Florida State University, and I was thinking of going to a Bible college, but then right now I'm in the middle of applying for Air Force Officers Training School. But before the service, I prayed and asked Jesus to speak to me, and I believe he has through you, and I believe he wants me at Baptist University. And he agreed with me that it did seem uncanny. So with only $20 on me, I went off to Baptist University of America, and every chapel message that I heard seemed to match what I had in my devotions that morning. Like if I was in 1 Samuel chapter 2, the message would be on 1 Samuel chapter 2. And stuff like this was happening every day for the next 30 days. I ended up getting a job that helped support me through school. A church took me on for $100 support, and that $20 stretched out. I had my struggles. I had hard times. There was one day I only had a chicken bone to eat, though I found out later that there was food for me in the cafeteria. If I just spoke up and let people know that I didn't have money for food, I would have got some. But to make a long story short, though I had struggles at BUA, I ended up graduating from that school. And I made dear friends when I was there. I surrendered to the mission field while I was there. And I was in missionary preparation. And I remember as a young lady, I prayed every day that if I didn't marry in his will, that God would break up the relationship. So I was often puzzled later when I finally did get a husband, and married, that God gave me a husband who wasn't spiritual. He was in church all the time, but I never saw him read his Bible. He was mean to me. He seemed to lack the quality of compassion. And even though he wanted to go to the mission field with me as his wife, I said, God, you got to forgive me. But I cannot be a missionary if I feel that the Christianity that I'm presenting to people is false. And this man I married to, David Schuler, is not spiritual. He goes to church all the time, but he never leads in family devotions. I never see any power in prayer. And I just refuse to go to the mission field with a husband like that. So I figured I must be out of God's will. And as I was rethinking about my life, I said, I still love you, Jesus. And I was going to church all the time and reading my Bible every day. And I loved Jesus, and I loved what he did for me. But you got to forgive me, but I refuse to go to the mission field with a husband like this. What kind of example would we be? I says, I can't do it, Jesus. I'm not going to go there just to put on a performance. If the Christianity we have is not real, I'm not going. So that's what I told Jesus. And so I did not encourage my husband to go to the mission field. I said, first of all, you want to apply to a board when you don't even agree with their theological position. He was an avid King James only person, and the boards that we would have gone under didn't take our position. I said, why would you want to do that? So we ended up staying in the States, and I think everybody wrote me off as backslidden Christian, And David made it appear that way too, like, oh, it's my wife's fault that I'm not in the mission field. Well, I said, Jesus, I wanted a husband like Hudson Taylor, that missionary doctor who was a real, genuine Christian and loved you and really lived by faith and read his Bible every day, and loved you and who didn't just put on a big performance. Said, I'm not going to go be a fake Christian out on the mission field, okay? Says, I can't do that. So that's what I told Jesus. Well, around 1991, after I'd been married about 4 or 5 years and was thoroughly disillusioned with my marriage and my husband, and really puzzled why God allowed me to marry this guy, Brent Spiner, I started writing Brent Spiner. I saw a Pen Pals episode, and I was so impressed with the vastness that I sensed that Brent had, that I wished my husband had. So I wrote him letters, knowing he belonged to the New Age satanic Star Trek show, so I felt safe. So I just told him anything and everything I believe. I says, I'm a born-again Christian. However, I don't agree with my fellow believers who are these self-righteous prudes, like my husband, I didn't go out and say my husband. That's how I felt. I said, I'm just like, I think we should be loving and tolerant. I said, this is what I really believe. I know some people might think I'm liberal for feeling this way, but it's what I really believe. I said, loving and tolerant and peace-loving, and that the greatest thing we can be is to love each other and get along. And so I wrote Brent this, and I said, I know, you probably think I'm some crazy nut, right, human. I says, however, I do believe in Jesus, and I do believe the only way through heaven is through Jesus, but I'm not sure I agree with them with some of their real strictness. And at that time I thought rock music was a sin because the beat was supposed to emulate like the sexual moves. That's what I read from the Bob Jones University stuff I would read about music, So, but I got to the point now I was so turned off by my husband and his rigid Christianity, and he was so mean to me that I was kind of open. I was starting to become more open towards a more loose Christianity. Now, I'm not saying like to go out and have sex with 1 million people or that you be unfaithful to your husband, but to not be so rigid in some of my interpretations, especially in music and dancing and drinking and stuff like that. So I said, I'm going to go ahead and be friends with Brent, okay? So I was friends with Brent, and I told him exactly how I felt. I figured he probably thinks I'm crazy. Anyway, so here's somebody I can be friends with who will accept me the way I am, even if I am a liberal, loose Christian. Well, lo and behold, he actually sent me a letter saying he appreciated hearing my thoughts, and he thanked me for my opinion about his portrayal of data. I thought, wow, he gets like 1 million letters, and he wrote me a letter. So I sent him a cassette tape. I stayed up all night. I got on my piano and I sang, "It is well with my soul day by day." I filled it up. I sang my heart. I said, this is all Christian hymns. This is, thank you. I'm going to send this music to you, and I hope you'll listen, and I hope it'll be a blessing to you. Well, lo and behold, when Brent got that tape, he fell in love with me from hearing me sing. So he made All the Other Lies back. I didn't know that. I heard he was making a music album, and I figured it was rock music or something like that. It says, probably not my kind of music. I'm not going to buy it, But I kept writing him every couple of weeks because he was like my soulmate through the pen friendship, because he was the only person I could truly be myself with and say what I really believed. Well, I had trouble with the state at that time. They were harassing me, and I was afraid they were going to take my son away from me because he accidentally got into some of my medicine. So I wrote Brent about it, and I found out that guy made an episode called Drumhead, and when I saw that, I thought, Brent's reading my mail, and he's trying to help me with this data. So this guy's incredible. So at that point, I worshipped him like I said, he may not be a Christian, but he sure is a giving and big person. I really think this guy's awesome. So anyways, he called me. I didn't figure it out right away. He called me on the phone and started making love to me on the phone. He knew I was married and I was a Christian. I didn't figure out it was him right away until my Christian friend, Melody Rondeau, sent me a tape of his Oh, the Other Lies back. Oh my God. That voice on the phone who's been making love to me, that's Brent Spiner. It's the exact same voice in All Yellow Eyes is back. I said, Brent, I adore you, but I'm married and I love Jesus and I can't go to you. I'm so sorry. I said, but can we be friends? And so we became friends. So he says, please, can I come over? Why not? I said, I can't. It wouldn't be right, Brent. I can't. So I turned him down just for Jesus. We were having revival services at that time, too. It was really funny is I felt like a first-class sinner because I was dreaming about making love to Brent while I was married. But when I prayed during the invitation, the altars would all fill up. I thought, man, this is strange. It must be because I have so much love in my heart that Jesus is happy about that in spite of my adulterous, dirty, sinful heart. And I found out later I was praying down earthquakes and stuff. Like when I got the letter from the Paramount Studios woman attorney, and I said, well, first of all, let me tell you what happened to me. We had a funeral at my church, and I went to a little girl who died of brain cancer. And when I was at the funeral, the message the preacher preached, and he didn't know what was going on with me and Brent, that we were pen friends and kind of like loving each other through the mail. So I told Brent, Jesus said it's okay for me to love you through the mail, but that's as far as it can go. Other than that, I'll be in trouble with him, okay? So that's as far as it went. He respected that. I respected him for that. So after the message, when I came home, I put my CD player on random mode, and the first song that came on was, there's a place for us, somewhere a place for us. Jesus said, Gail, I want you to know, I didn't tell you till now, but Brent is part of my plan for your life, and someday I'm going to give him to you as a husband. I said, Jesus, how are you going to do that? I'm married. He said, I can't tell you now, but you got to trust me on this, Gail. Someday I'll do it. And he said, on top of that, I'm going to give you a millennial marriage to him. You say, how did he tell you this? Just from my Bible readings and the still small voice in my when I'd pray. I'd hear it when I prayed, talking to me in prayer. Well, you know what happened? I only believe scriptural grounds for divorce was adultery, desertion, or death. And even though I felt like my husband was a spiritual crud, I didn't have scriptural grounds for divorce, so I wouldn't leave him, or I'd be in sin. But around 1998, after the Jesuits, Laurie McBride, tried to burn my mobile home down, and I had my life threatened, and I realized that my husband was on her side, I came to the conclusion that if I stayed in the marriage, I would die. And Jesus reinforced that in prayer. And he finally told me, Gail, you need to divorce your husband now. Now's the time. You have scriptural grounds. He has deserted you, and you have scriptural grounds for divorce. So I went through the divorce process. It was very hard and courageous of me because I had not worked outside of the marriage my entire life. And, but you know what? And I've been through a lot. But Brent, I said, I want to go be Brent's wife now, Jesus. And I tried. But the Jesuits caused problems. And so I haven't been able to get to him. But in December 99, when Jesus spoke to me and said that Laurie McBride was a Vatican agent, that's when I decided to marry Brent, because I realized Brent had put up with her for me. And I never doubted his promise that Brent and I would get together someday. So anyways, I started a Facebook page, people. I'm reconnecting with my friends from Bible college days, and I'd like you all to check it out. I've got some cool people from my past. What's really funny is most of them are now in full-time Christian service, and I find that interesting because, in Bible college, the percentage that actually end up in full-time Christian services, I don't know. It's usually, I don't know, maybe like 50% or something. But of all the people I was friends with at Baptist University, about 90% of them are now in full-time Christian service, which is pretty high. And they were all friends with me. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I find it interesting. Anyways, one of them, Jill, has cancer right now. And Terrence Jenkins told me that Zach Knight gave her the cancer just because she was my friend. And her name was Jill. So pray for her. And she's got cancer. Pray that she gets better. We have got the cure to most cancers at Church of Gail, but Zach Knight gave it to her, and I'm mad at him for that just because she's my friend. I said, why? Because she's my friend, so pray for her, okay?